next speaker will be Suzanne Weiss. Suzanne Weiss, I should say, didn't write this bio. I wrote it. Suzanne Weiss was born in France to a Jewish family during the mass slaughter of Europe's Jews by Hitler and the Nazis. She's a survivor, a writer, an editor, a lifelong socialist, an activist, and not least, a staunch advocate for Palestinian rights and the BDS movement. And
Hi. I've been living with this Comintern project for almost 30 years. What I found striking was that the Comintern was led by many people, a team. And John himself is a team person. That has been his approach from his youth as a leader of the League for Socialist Action, and how he organized his Comintern project. An impressive feature about John is the way he drew people to the project. You need just to look at his latest volume. He thanks 62 people in 14 countries. In fact, that's how I met John. In 1984, I visited New York and dropped in on Pathfinder Press. When I entered the workroom, he stepped forward and befriended me and asked if I knew a second language. I said I knew French, but not well enough to translate. But he persisted and showed me some of the sources he was using. His perseverance made me a little suspicious about his intentions. However, later I noticed that he made such appeals at every opportunity, and even at conferences and conventions. I was in Pathfinder one day when John was on cleanup detail. He happened to be looking into a broom closet when the movement's national secretary was walking by and asked, "What are you looking for?" "A Russian translator," John instantly replied. Did you hear? A Russian translator. Even today, he carefully eyes anyone who speaks another language. Our friendship developed rapidly, and John asked me to live with him in New York. He said he had committed to be there for 10 years to work on the Comintern project. So we found an apartment, and after 10 hours at Pathfinder, he would come home, help make supper, and then diligently work away at learning Serbo-Croatian, Russian, and other languages. Well, in 1993, John left Pathfinder, and we moved to Toronto. And so, his Comintern project ended in Canada. We were not doing anything much politically and felt isolated. Later, Pathfinder asked John to resume his work on the Comintern with the Third Congress. John did so, this time on his own, writing and editing after returning home from his full-time job. Then came the Iraq War. John called on the political wing of Pathfinder to actively defend the people of Iraq against the US war. And for that, Pathfinder broke relations with him. They came to collect his work, and as carton after carton was lugged out of the door of our apartment, it seemed again that the Comintern project was over. Actually, that turned out to be a big opportunity for us. We met all of you folks and comrades involved in different socialist and activist groups. John and I became politically inspired again, as if waking from a long sleep of inactivity. We worked in Palestine solidarity, supported Haiti and Cuba defense, and rallied to Venezuela and Bolivia's revolutions, as well as to ecological justice. So when the chance came for John to have another shot at the Comintern work, we were part of a supportive community and also deeply involved in social struggles and experiences that made the old Comintern text come alive for us. I notice, being close to John, that the lessons of the Comintern resonate through his activism. His book stresses that Clara Zetkin and others anticipated the spirit of the present-day indigenous movement, and we are now active in the indigenous solidarity. Last year, he linked the Fourth Congress to the current struggle in Greece, and suddenly he had a flock of Facebook friends in Greece. For John, ideas debated in the Comintern pulsate in today's struggles. I'll end by saying that I am personally obliged to John Riddell for enriching my life with the Comintern Project. Thank you.
Paul Kellogg is a writer and teacher working at, where is Paul? Hi. Working at Athabasca University, and his focus is on political economy.
First thing I'll say is I'm happy to be on this panel. It's unique in several ways. Second thing, why do we study the United Front? It's the subject of the book. It's the subject of what we're talking about today. I learned about this as a lesson that came from Trotsky, Leon Trotsky, in the 1930s, in the context of the rise of fascism in Germany, where a political view was put forward that said we have to unite in the workers' movement against the main enemy, which is fascism. That argument did not win in the German movement in the 1930s. Fascism, Nazism came to power, and we paid a very, very deep price. So that's the frame in which I was introduced to the United Front many years ago. It's a little sobering today, because yesterday in Greece, there was a march through the streets of Athens by 30,000 members and supporters of a Nazi organization, the Golden Dawn. It's very serious. It's 25% unemployment in Greece, 50% for the young people. The crisis in Europe is very severe, and we have, it's not a replay of the 1930s and all that type of thing, but there are issues to do with the fight against fascism, for which a knowledge of the United Front tactic is pretty important. How do we unite against the fascists? Now, the point that John made in his introduction is really true. For a long time, there was a tradition of understanding the first 4 congresses of the Communist International as the place where a lot of these lessons were developed and learned. And we learned it in a very particular way. It was interesting when you were talking about it was Lenin's school and Trotsky's school. That's the way in which it was, many of us first learned it. The first value of John's book is that you get a clear picture that it cannot be reduced to 2 people. That Lenin and Trotsky make a wonderful contribution, but you meet in the book Hertha Sturm, Versenika Kasparova, Sofia Smidovic. I'd never heard of them before. And you meet again in a new way, people like Clara Zetkin. A couple of people have already remarked on this. Her stature will grow in your eyes when you read it. So you read the book, and the stature of people like Clara Zetkin will go up in your eyes a lot. I mean, her role was remarkable. And the stature of others will go down. The stature of people, I'll name one name, a person named Grigory Zinoviev. He will shrink in stature as you read the book. But that's only one step in terms of figuring this out. We've done a series of study groups. John has go to his website. He's got a really lovely series of classes that you can take, organized around the book. They're quite a lot of fun. They're role-playing classes where you take on a role of someone in the commentary. It's actually really a good way of learning it. Good way of reading the book. Now, in terms of the United Front, in going through one of these classes, we were reminded of the fact that the United Front was no one's idea. It wasn't Lenin's idea. It wasn't Trotsky's idea. It wasn't any individual's idea. Actually, this profound tactic, this profound strategy of the workers' movement comes from the working class itself. It was the working class militants in Stuttgart in Germany who said, we will unite against the far right, in spite of what our leaders are telling us. Our leaders are telling us one thing, we don't care, they're wrong, we're uniting against the far right. The workers in Stuttgart had some advantages in terms of amplifying this message. The message was amplified by Clara Zetkin, by Paul Levy, by a cadre of Rosa Luxemburgists, if you want to call them that, who were willing to listen to the working class and amplify that message, and it gets into the Fourth Congress in a very profound way. And the point there is that this is a story of a mass movement. It's not a story of individuals. It's a story of the working class itself. We have had a problem in the left. We've had a problem in the left I'm familiar with. We've had a prejudice towards division. John and I have we've been neighbors for a very long time, and we didn't know it. We were working in the same city for a very long time, and we didn't know it. We only met in 2004, and that's absolutely ridiculous. There's a certain absurdity to, now that I reflect back on it, it's an absolutely absurd situation that it's only 2004 that we get to know each other. The left in Toronto has been extremely good at divisions. Very, very accomplished at figuring out how to divide one from the other, and very, very, very bad at unity. And so, since 2004, our collaboration around Latin America, around other issues, around the tar sands today, has been very fruitful. So we try to learn. We try to learn from, but we're, in a certain sense, we're learning from the Fourth Congress. But we're learning from the Fourth Congress is really just a window into how to find a way to learn from the working class struggle itself. How do we learn from the workers of Stuttgart, who were the first to see the need for unity? Anyway, so let's move from a prejudice towards divisions towards a prejudice towards unity against capitalism and against the far right. Enough. Thank you, John, for writing this book.